Hello to you all. Hello to you all. I'm glad you're here today. It's one of my favorite subjects, which is talking about aging. Um, and I don't know why, but it's something I think is because I'm in the midst of it, as are all of us. I have some experience with this specifically. And even though everything I talk about in these live videos and in the videos, the pre-recorded videos, I have experience with, there's something that feels more natural or more easy about talking about this subject. So I'm excited about being here with you. My daughter is here. Hi, Alyssa. I'm glad you're here. And who else is here? If you would say hello, or if you can say hello, that would be great in the chat. Maybe some of you can't, but that's okay. I know you're there. Hi, Marge. My friend Jennifer was inviting her parents and in-laws to come. So if you're here, welcome. I don't know if you'll be able to chat, but I hope you will. But I'm glad you're here as well. So today we're talking about aging. The whole month is talking about health and well-being, what I call whole being and well-being. Now, we all want that, but do we want it enough? I think that's probably the question, is we all want whole being and well-being. We want to thrive. We want to be young at heart. And we really want that. We want it when we're young, and we want it as we're aging, and we want it when we're elderly, in a sense, when we're really old. And that young at heartness is something that some of us have naturally, but most of us have to cultivate it. Most of us have to be conscious about shifting and changing ourselves, perhaps, so that we can bring in that thriving, young at heart perspective and attitude to life. Fred, thanks for being here. I'm glad your internet is up, and if it goes down, I totally understand, but I'm really glad you're here right now. So the intention today is to look at not, when we think of aging and health, we think about diet and exercise. Well, the thing about that and we all say, oh yeah, I'm going to change my diet tomorrow, or next week, or after the summertime, I'm going to get to it. The challenge is most of us have to have a good enough reason to make that choice. So for instance, you've seen me talk about this book a lot, Radical Remission. And this book is about cancer and surviving cancer. Now, it's really for everybody, really about those of us who are want to survive aging, and not only survive aging, but thrive through that aging period, or thrive through middle age, thrive, period. And one of the one of the 9 key factors that brings about radical remission that caught me today, you've heard me, I've talked about this book just about every week, but in terms of aging and health and being young at heart, we have to have a strong reason for living. We have to have a strong reason to make a shift in our life, to move towards thriving. If we don't have a strong reason for living, then we won't be inspired to do what needs to get done. We won't be inspired enough to shift our reality, our attitudes, our moods, our commitments from just settling, suffering, and surviving to actually thriving. Now, my daughter, Alyssa, is a great role model for me right now, because she's just in the process of completing a 12-week major physical workout challenge with high intensity. And she's done it. And she's really good at doing those things. And what motivated her to do that is what kept her motivated to complete. And that's really great. And for us who are aging, which is all of us, because we're all in this process of moving through our life and evolving, we all have to have a sense of what is that we want at the finish line, if you will. And most of us give up a sense of power and we give up a sense of choice, and we give up that one of the other things it says is take control of your health. We give up control of who we are. And as a life coach and a transformational life coach, I ask questions all the time to my clients or my trainees to say, what's the intention of giving up the control of your life? What do we give up as we age? I don't know about you and maybe your parents or other people, but there's that conversation that starts to become more, it creeps into an everyday conversation. Oh, I went to the doctors today. I went to the ear doctor today. I have to go off. I live on an island. So it's like, I have to go off and see the heart specialist. I have to go off and see the podiatrist. So the conversations become all about seeing doctors and authorities to deal with our health. And at some point we give over control. And it's part of what we've been trained to do. But in essence, we begin to go into decline and decrepitude. In a sense, it's like, oh, my doctor tells me this. My doctor tells me I need this medication, but this medication is making me sleepy or depressed, or this medication is doing this and that. And so we in a sense, give our control over to other people. And to thrive and to stay young at heart, we need to manage that with our doctors or our health practitioners or our wellness practitioners, so that we stay in alignment and stay in control and stay responsible for who we are inside. So one of the things, the dilemmas that I want to raise, and I have to look at my notes every once in a while here, is two things. One is, so I'm 69, and I notice constantly the wrinkles and the sags and a little bit more pudgy than I used to be, and all of those kinds of external things. But the inside of me, the me that's always been there, is still here. She's vital and excited, and actually she's in greater well-being and whole being than ever. So I've let go of a lot of emotional stuff, and I train myself to be more positive. And in doing that, I become more of an expression of my essential self. So I get to know who I am. It's one of the perks, for me, of growing, is that I'm learning more and more of who I am. And I'm able to say, well, I don't want to live in that negativity, or I don't want to be moody and cranky. And I can change that. I can train myself to think differently and notice when I'm being cranky and how I can make that different. So I can become more myself. So my point in saying that is, my vehicle may be declining, but the youth of my being is still ever eternally present. She's still as young and youthful and vibrant as ever. It gives, I'm sure you've seen people who have that spark in their eye, and that never goes away. And people who have lost that spark, if you actually talk to them, you can help them revive, because you begin to engage them in such a way that that spark comes back. So one of the dilemmas is to keep realizing, it's whether you're the person inside the vehicle or a family member or a younger friend of an aging person, is the person inside is still as young as ever. My friend Paula Capitano is turning 80 in a couple of days. And my God, she just is such a role model for me, because I see the vibrancy of her being, regardless of what her body's doing. And that's a really important element to keep in mind and to remember. The other day I went to a picnic, and I was raised that when older people come into the room, or anybody comes into the room, you stand up in respect. And you always give your seat over to the older person. You always take care of other people, and it's very respectful. And even now, I think it's a really honoring, because I see the divine. It's like the namaste element. I see the divine in you, and I respect that and honor it. And so I've always had that orientation. So the other day we're at this picnic and there's actually just one main round table with about 6 chairs at it. And then there's other places to sit. And so I go to sit there and I go, oh, wait, there are other people who are older than me. And I went, wait a minute, I'm one of those old people now. And I owned it in terms of respecting, oh, I'm one of those old people. I don't have to abdicate myself. I can actually be one of these old people and honor and respect myself for that. So I took a seat I was the 5th oldest out of 14 people. So I gladly took a seat at this table. But there was this challenge of, oh yeah, I forgot, because I'm so in my youthfulness inside me. If I don't look in a mirror, I can't tell how old I am. And I'm fairly active. So I'm as active, if not more so than ever before. So I don't think of myself as being old. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. Oh yeah, I am one of those old people. So we are always this thriving, young at heart being. And we have choices in terms of what shows up in our life. So that's number one. And let me make sure I get the other one before I move on here. I want to talk about depression, because I think, so I just read that even though depression is common among aging people, it's actually not clinical depression that occurs, but it's that sense of having not dealt with letting go of the past. It's losing a sense of self, the self that you knew in terms of identities. Oh, I worked at this career and I did that, and I lived in this part of the world that's very, amazing. And so all of these things that I did or was and no longer a part of my life, we may not have let go of that emotionally. We may be still attached to that. And people that we've lost, or lifestyles that we've lost, that we still hold on to the emotion of that can cause, in a sense, a depression. It can cause a lowering of our energy because we're holding on to emotions that don't serve us, but we don't know what to do with them. So depression, in a sense, is it can be a clinical situations, but it's rare in elderly. But it can be that emotional state of loss of meaning or loss of purpose. Why live? And so when we can look at these things, we can be at choice too. Now, as a coach, I talk a lot, a transformational life coach, I talk a lot about being at choice. And part of the dilemma of being in our consensus reality is that we're told what to do. We're told what's true. Here's the statistics about this. And I talk about statistics too. We talk about statistics and research, and here's what's going to happen to you when you're 80, and here's what's going to happen to you when you're 75, and here's what, and here's what and you begin to anticipate and expect those things to happen, as in the decline and the decrepitude. A couple times in some of my conversations in my podcast, I have a podcast on aging like a guru. I also have this book. I'm going to talk about this in a second. Aging Like a Guru. When I do that, I forget what I'm about to talk about. And then I saw Aisha here, and Aisha's saying hello. So I just got a little waylaid there. When I am doing these kinds of things, I do some research. And so I was looking at Alzheimer's and dementia. And statistically, 5 to 8% of the world's population will get Alzheimer's or dementia. And so in one way, that's not very many. But as we get older, there's a likelihood that it will occur. However, saying that 5 to 8% actually have Alzheimer's, and I think it goes up to 11% for people over 85. That means that 89%, if 11% have it, 89%, very bad with math, 89% don't have it, or will have less of it, a lot less of it. So how we live in terms of, fear of dementia or fear of heart disease or fears. We think in terms of fears. It actually lowers our immune system, which is fascinating, and it increases cortisols and all those things that diminish our health. So when we live in fear, it's actually diminishing our health. But to come out of fear and live in potentiality and positivity, it actually goes generally against the norms, which is interesting. So I'm just checking the chats. So it goes against the norms that you should be afraid. You should have the right amount of insurance, health insurance. You should have all of these things in place. And it's very fear-based. But when we're in fear, we are not able to be enlivened and young at heart. We're scared. And when we're in fear, we get anxious and our heart goes up and it starts to deteriorate our system just because that's what happens. And that state of anxiousness and worry is less than living in that state of young at heart. So what my intention is, one of the intentions of today's conversation is to help you look at, what am I thinking? Like, what am I choosing? How am I really looking at this? And regardless of whether you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s, you have the ability to think about and create and choose and then create the kind of reality that you want to live in for the rest of your life. Now, for me, I don't really care how long I live. If I die tomorrow, I'd be okay with that, truly. But as long as I'm on the planet, I want a high quality of life. I want to be young at heart. I want to be active and engaged. In fact, in a month from today, I'm going on a horse trail riding trip for 1 week in the mountains in Washington State. And I'm very excited about it. I don't know what's going to happen. Of course I don't. It's an adventure. But I'm preparing as best I can. And I'm going, am I crazy? Because I'm an old person, right? But the part of me that's young at heart and has stayed young and stayed positive has a very excited. I'm very excited about this. And at the same time being conscious about possibilities. So I'll have travel insurance, those kinds of things. Again, my intention is with this is when we're looking at who you are as a whole being, that includes the physical, that includes your emotional, that includes the spiritual self, that includes the energy elements of you that we don't give much credence to in most parts of, well, at least Western society. It includes all of that. So when we can begin to go, okay, young at heart, what does that mean? It means when I think about myself, it's like I feel this little pitter patter in my heart. It gets delighted and excited. And when I'm not there in young at heart, I'm someplace else. And that's something to consider. I'm going to read you something out of Aging Like a Guru. I've not ever read anything on this live yet. So I'm going to do that in a second. But one of the things that this will bring up, I believe, is that we do a lot of thinking about the future in the sense of anticipating positive things happening, but also the negative things. So we're anticipating what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what's going to happen. And at the same time, we as we get older, we have more memories to draw on. And so we think about the old stories of Aunt Esther and cousin Margaret and or the fishing trips I took with Harold and Carolyn and those kinds of things. And so we can spend a lot of time in the past or the future, but what about now? What's happening now? And a lot of times people will go, nothing's happening right now. That's why I spend more time in the future and the past, because nothing's happening right now. And so that's something we also have to look at, is how can we become more engaged with our now as opposed to living in the anticipation of now. Can't wait till now happens. It's like, here it is. Today, as I mentioned earlier, it's like I actually look forward to this particular live YouTube with you because I actually like talking about this subject. And though I always anticipate, the others, this was get more excited and aliving to anticipate being with you today on this subject. So I'm going to read this piece from Aging Like a Guru. I make a reference to a group that I ran a couple of years ago, actually just before COVID. And it's that group was called Aging Like a Guru. And so I talk about that. So this is called The Well-Worn Path of Anticipation. It'll be about 5 minutes, I think. Okay. As a child, my focus of attention was quite often on the future. I anticipated the delights of holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and 4th of July, just to name a few. I actually anxiously awaited the time when I was old enough to go to church, to begin school, being like the big kids in my family. I longed for my first crush, my first date, my first kiss, and my first, I couldn't wait until I could leave my parents' home, go off to college, find a husband, get married, and have children. Then when the unhappiness of my marriage happened, I longed for and anticipated the way out of this marriage. Once out, I anticipated the next big relationship, finishing graduate school and getting a job as a therapist. So much of my life was lived in anticipation. Living life in a constant state of anticipation has been a recurring theme in our Tuesday groups called Aging Who Me. This past week, John says, and John is like 90. John says, all my life I lived in anticipation, always looking forward to the next terrific adventure. Now that I'm old, my anticipations are a lot smaller in scope, like anticipating my morning visit to the post office and to Teasers for coffee. These are as fulfilling today as the more fantastical adventures of the past. The others in the room nod their heads, acknowledging John and what he is sharing. Margaret says she has noticed that what used to get her out of bed in the morning, what she anticipated and compelled her to jump out of bed, doesn't exist anymore. There are fewer and fewer things that excite her enough to leave the comforts of her bed so she lingers until something gets her up. I asked the question of the group. We live so much of our lives in the state of anticipation. Where would we be if we weren't in anticipation? Lorraine shouts out, in the now. Everyone nods their head and joins Lorraine in the idea of that. In this idea that if we aren't living in anticipation, then we are living in the present moment. There's a pregnant pause. Then the question that begs to be asked is, what is it that has us choose to spend so much of our lives anticipating the future? And what are we missing out on in the present while we're always busy mentally creating a future? Ellen adds, yes, and it isn't that we're just anticipating positive things happening. A lot of my life is anticipating the not so good things happening. Worrying is a form of anticipation too, right? So in our anticipations of the good and the bad things occurring, we are not attending to who we are and what is occurring in the here and now. Many of us don't even know how to do this. I know. How many of us carry our cell phones anticipating the next text, email, or Facebook notification? Or even from the news, right? Oh my God, the news just came on. It just told me. I find this fascinating. I wrote a book about 8 years ago, now about 10 years ago, called The Unholy Path of a Reluctant Adventurer. It is a recalling of my life lived between the life I anticipated and the life I actually lived. I anticipated my whole life being content as a mom, wife, and just a part of the community of Niagara Falls, Ontario, where I lived. I never anticipated leaving my children in the custody of their dad, living in Nova Scotia, crossing the Atlantic Ocean on a 93-foot schooner, or getting numerous graduate degrees, including a PhD. I also never anticipated writing books or living on Orcas Island. I never anticipated that I'd be thoroughly enjoying living in a travel trailer, for 15 years. I just didn't see any of that coming. Somewhere between that state of anticipation and the state of being in the present moment, there must be another state of being. But in that state that appears to be between anticipation and living in the now, life is unfolding. I believe it is the road less traveled. It is available to all of us, but few willingly explore this territory. To age like a guru, I believe we have more access to this state of being. With less stamina and energy, we begin to be more selective about what we wish to bring into our lives. As we age, most people say they want more peace and less angst, more simplicity. So they choose accordingly. In the anticipation of just opening their eyes and seeing the light of day can bring as much excitement as a child waking up on Christmas Day. It is a challenging practice to anticipate the now. However, I believe that aging like a guru provides us with the wisdom to take on this practice effortlessly. I really like that. It's like sometimes I read these things as if I didn't write them. So I don't have it. It's just, but I love that idea of opening my eyes and seeing the light of day can bring as much excitement as a child on Christmas, waking up on Christmas Day, because it can. And it takes some training to do that. So the question is, what do we want? What do you want? Thanks, Marge. If we all claim, which I think if all of us could, in the comments below or wherever, claim, yes, I want to live in whole being and well-being. What is it that is interfering with? What are the obstacles to you choosing to live in well-being? Because that's a really, really important question. Many of you who've watched me or talked to me before know that I have 4 main questions that I ask people. What is it you want? What's in the way? What needs to shift so that what's in the way goes away? And what will you practice? So if you say to me, I want whole being, well-being, I want to be vital, and I want to feel that young at heartness, great, I'm excited. And I might say, what does that look like? And you go, well, I've got some serious physical illnesses, so I don't have the physical strength or capacities right now to do much. But it can look like maybe learning to play a musical instrument, or maybe walking with canes, or whatever that is. But looking at the potentiality of what it is that's going to bring about that sense of fulfillment. And I'll tell you, for myself and people that I work with, is that it's not the destination. You've never heard this, I'm sure. It's not the destination where you're going to experience happiness. That brings about some fulfillment, but in the step-by-step elements of getting there, getting the incrementalness of one step at a time, there's fulfillment in that. As part of my horse riding adventure, I've been, for the last couple of months, I've been taking horse riding lessons. And horsemanship is more what it is, because I spend more time on the ground with the horse than on the horse. So what's been happening is that the cultivation of learning how to be in relationship to this beautiful animal, looking at my interpretations that I make that limit and get in the way of this relationship. So every time I go, something shifts, something changes in me. I learn something incrementally different. So how I be with these horses 2 months after I started is very different than I expected. I've ridden horses all my life, not quite for the last 30 years, but before that. So I'm pretty competent on the horse, but learning about the horse, learning about the relationship, learning about things I didn't know, learning about myself in relation to this animal those are all incremental elements that are taking me into growing this me that will eventually get on a horse and be in the wilderness for for a week. So my point is that we can go, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a horseback riding, or I'm going to thrive in this way. But and we anticipate, much like what I wrote. It's like we anticipate being there, arriving, when it's actually the nowness of this that is making a difference in me in relation to this desire to go riding. And I think that's true for people who are aging with debilitating diseases and illnesses. It's like, who am I inside? And can I be in a state of thriving even through challenges? Or do I need to suffer through this? There's a lot of spiritual teachers to say, pain is inevitable, but the suffering is optional. And most of us, especially in Western society, where we don't understand how we create suffering, we don't understand what that means. We go, well, of course you're suffering. Of course I'm going to suffer with this. It's debilitating. And the whole attitude of, oh, I'm suffering comes on, as opposed to being aware of my body is having its difficulties, but I am a separate being inside this experience. And again, it's challenging to be aware of and become conscious of, oh yeah, I'm in here, and me, actually, I'm not suffering, but I can move into suffering by choice and by attitude and mood. And this brings me to the in a sense, the third part of my conversation with you today is about that. So many years ago, like I'll say, like 40 years ago, I was 29, and I was beginning my training as a marriage and family therapist, and I was taking courses in transpersonal work, but I didn't know it. I didn't know that was that at the time. And I was working in this class with this fellow, and he was an amazing. He looked like an elderly gentleman. Maybe he was like 65. I don't know. But from where I was, he was old. But one of the things that he said was, which always stayed with me, is that now I just had one of those moments that as we grow old, we become more of who we already are in terms of personality. So if you are a person who's always worried and always been controlling and always trying to take care of and always being frustrated by other people's lack of competence, if you've always been that grumpy person, that judgmental person, you will become more of that as you age. And if you are lighthearted and playful and funny and joking and expressive and singing, and you'll be more of that, because it's our natural inclination. I mean, there's our essential nature, but then there's the inclinations that bring about a sense of comfort. So in my family, having a sense of humor was a survival mechanism. It was a strategy that we learned, being funny. People say I'm not that funny, but I think I'm very funny. But we learned to be funny. We learned to be funny. And we learned to be lighthearted, because that brought about, it's just as a survival strategy, it made other people happy, and it gave people a sense of well-being. So we liked that. So we did more of that. So being funny is something that I like bringing to the table. And the more authentic I am, the less I hold in my attitudes and moods of life sucks. I can be more playful and expressive, much, much more than I used to be. So if life gets hard, I will choose to find the rainbows, if you will. I will choose to make lemonade or lemon meringue pie, which would be my preference. Where other people, when they get worried or upset, or just even the beginning of discomfort emotionally, or physically, that beginning of discomfort, we call it restlessness, irritable, and it's, something's not right. We start to get grumpy or angry or pissed off or moody in that sense. And as we get old, we can keep relying on that way of being in the world by choice, because we do have choice. When my dad was 91 when he died, and my mom died so he was like 85, I think, 85 or 86 when my mom died. And so for those last 5 or 6 years, he was in a lot of company with my sisters and brothers, my siblings, and he got nasty on occasion. And he was alcoholic, and he would get nasty, and they wouldn't put up with it. And they said, if you're going to be like this, we're not coming. We're not visiting you. And they wouldn't. And then the next time they did visit, he was mindful of that, and he didn't so much do that. But they were always clear with him that behavior was not okay. And he chose to turn it around so that he could be with his children. He turned that around. And we have that choice. We have that choice to notice, oh my God, I'm just cranky as all get out. I don't want to be cranky. Or maybe there's people who want to be cranky because it gives them a sense of power and control. But you can choose that too. In a sense, you can choose to be powerful and in control from a place of happiness and fulfillment and engaging with people respectfully. It's your choice. It's our choice. And this is where we have that ability to say, I may be in pain in my body. I may be frustrated. I may be in the midst of decline and decrepitude. And can I find the way out? Can I find my way to actually find peace and hold on to peace and experience peace and wonder and delight in this moment, waking up, opening your eyes to the beauty around you. And we have this choice. And so I was going to add something, but the and doesn't have to come. Any thoughts? Any questions? Well, let me see what else I have in my magic notes here. So I want to come back to that to age in health. I'll just say it this here now. When I was reading about Alzheimer's and the decline and what that means, I noticed that I read about Alzheimer's in the blue zones. So the blue zones are, I think there's 7 or 9 areas in the world where people live a very long, healthy life. And so I Googled Alzheimer's and the blue zone, and there's very little Alzheimer's in those blue zones where they're eating well and are just thriving. Their environment is beautiful. They're thriving. And it's like, what is that? And, we can say, oh, well, it's the environment they're in. And it's like, what we can learn is here's the environment that helps and supports and empowers people in a sense. Naturally, they're eating healthy foods. Just naturally, it's part of the environment, the culture. So what can we learn from that? And one of the things that I read, and I not necessarily, I put the link below because I think it was 3 minutes of statistics by this fella that said, talked about the Mediterranean diet. And it's not the fish, it's eating more vegetables and fruits and less meats and dairy and a lot of natural oils, not oils from meat per se. And one of the things it said is that when they looked at the statistics, those people who were highly compliant with a good, healthy diet, they lived a whole bunch longer, basically. And they had that much less Alzheimer's. So healthy eating, healthy diets, healthy exercise, stimulation, this is all part of the whole conversation. Stimulation, social network, keep your brain active. You've heard all of these things. They're all going to keep your brain active, keep you thriving. The point is, do you want that? Do you want to thrive? And again, I came back to having in this book, The Radical Remission, is people needed a strong reason to live. If they had a strong reason to live, it was one of the 9 major factors of keeping them on the planet and having a great life. And so, do you have a strong reason to live? That's a huge question. I can tell you for the most of my life, I didn't actually. I kind of always anticipated dying. I was looking forward to dying for so long. And it was for a lot of reasons. Now I have a much better sense of who I am, and my life is so much more fun. And my engagement with you, but also with my clients and the people that I'm training to be coaches, and my books, and how I'm being my life, I'm actually enjoying my life. I don't think about dying hardly at all anymore, which is a big deal. So I have more reason to live. And that's partly because of all of the changes, letting go of the negativity in my life, creating more positivity. And those are things that you can say, oh yeah, but it's hard training every single day to notice those negative thoughts and notice the negative moods, and notice it wasn't until I'd gotten to a certain degree of awareness that I realized the degree of my life, like 60 years, I was living in dread constantly. And I don't know why. It was just part of this density that I was holding. So I had to work really hard to get out of that dread. Even now, it just makes me so sad that I didn't know it until I got to that point when I'm like, whoa, I'm living mostly in dread. And I can shift that because I'd been learning and training myself to shift those negativities to positive, just even seeing the negativity and going, stop, until I was able to have more positivity come in. It's very fascinating. And I think this has really added so much more to my thriving and my desire to live, because I keep learning so much more about myself. I have so many more capacities. My life keeps getting better in so many ways. I still live in a trailer. My income isn't great by, any imagination, but I am thriving and I am happy and I'm having a great life. It isn't about the money. It isn't about how big my house is. It's about what's happening inside me. And I didn't know that, but now that I know that, I now have the capacity to keep growing myself. It's very fun. Marge says, my mom said fear of pain makes it much worse. She was able to let go of it as she was dying, and her last few days were pain-free. Yeah. There's a lot of different exercises and experiments and processes that can help people distance them, like not be in pain. And David Hawkins, in his book, Marge, what's the book's name? Healing and Recovery. He talks over and over and over again about how pain occurs, where it is. It's like our body's doing something, but the pain is actually being registered in our brain. That's why when we go into surgery, we have an anesthetic, because that blocks the pain. We're still sawing on the body or whatever, but we block those receptors or whatever, the pain parts that make us go, ow. And so we have so much more information now on how we can not only manage pain, but be pain-free. It's big work. It's not like, okay, I'm going to do this for 4 days. I'm going to meditate and I'm going to focus. Oh, it didn't work. Damn it. I guess I'm not one of those people. It's like, no, this is a constant commitment to being in that state of thriving, that young of heartness. And the more that we are committed to that, the more evidence we're going to experience, even as we move along incrementally. If we expect those leaps, if we say, okay, I'm going to anticipate being pain-free, and oh, I'm not pain-free today, I'm not pain-free today, I'm not, and we focus on not the knots, then it's going to be really hard to get over there, rather than noticing those moments where you are pain-free. This is true in any developmental processes. So people who want to learn to be psychics, we all have the capacity to be psychic. This is a little bit of a side, but the point is we all have the ability to be psychic. We all have this ability to be intuitive. We all have the ability to, in a sense, read people's minds and communicate with people and animals on the other side. We all have that ability. But to practice that, to train ourselves, it takes the time it takes. And if I pay attention, when I pay attention to what I can see in terms of auras or light differences or fleeting something or others, if I pay attention to what I can see versus what I can't see, that's going to grow my capacity to see more and more and more. This is what's happened for me in this process, for me in this practice of evolving myself, is first of all, I got clear about noticing my negativity. Now, 80% of our thoughts are negative in nature. If we just change that to 60%, just think what would happen. But to change that, we have to start noticing, oh, there's a negative thought. Oh, there's a negative thought. Oh, there's a negative thought. And I would just start to see it and then begin to, once I was able to consciously be aware of it and then be consciously aware of my felt sense of self and in the emotional sense of myself that all went with that negative thinking, then I could start to pivot, as they say, and go, okay, hey, look outside. I had hummingbirds, this morning. I had a little dog visiting this afternoon. It was just so much delight. It's like, oh, you should work and you should this and that. It's like I was able to minimize the negativity and make room for going, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. And it makes a difference. And so now I have this much awareness of positivity. And the more that I see it and experience it, the more I see and experience, the more I see and experience. And it's amazing how that happens, but that's what's true. So we can't just automatically say, okay, one of my things on my bucket list is I want to see fairies before I go. And before I leave this planet, not before I go on this talk tonight. So I know that people have the ability to see fairies, and I want to know that experience. And so little by little, I'm cultivating awareness and I'm letting go of the density. I'm letting go of those thoughts that says, no, you can't do it. Who are you to do that? You're going to be one of those people that try, but you're going to fail. All that stuff, just put it aside and start to notice what I notice, whatever that means, and go from there. So again, that's a little bit of a sideways thing to say. We have the capacity to grow ourselves into a greater expansiveness of being young at heart. We have the capacity to grow our positive moods just by saying, oh, I've been depressed and that's how I've been, but I don't have to be depressed. There are millions of people who have been depressed and trained themselves to get out of depression. There are millions of people that were handicapped physically in so many ways, but they got themselves out of their depression. They got themselves out of that decrepitude, that powerless helplessness. They got themselves out of their wheelchairs. They got themselves walking. We have this incredible capacity to make these changes for ourselves. We just have to have the the convictions. And again, that conviction um, having a strong reason to live, having a strong reason to live, having a strong reason to thrive. And it's just, we go, yeah, I want to thrive. They're smoking a cigarette. Oh, by the way, if you noticed, some of you may have seen an image that was inadvertently on as the thumbnail for this YouTube, and it was a guy reading the newspaper with a cigarette in his hand. And then we switched it to a guy who doesn't have a cigarette in his hand. But it's like, yeah, I want to thrive. And I'll get around to it. I'm going to quit smoking as soon as my daughter graduates from college. Then I'll be able to do it. Too much stress, whatever that is. But it's like, do we have enough reason to begin today, to begin now, to begin this process of watching ourselves? This is not, there's no rocket science. There's no big therapies. There's no big techniques. There's no skills. You have all the skills you need. If you are watching this and listening, then you have what it takes to make a difference for yourself. It's a matter of going, yes, I want this, and I have to stop doing that. I have to stop thinking that. I have to stop whatever that is getting in the way of you having a life of thriving and being young at heart. And you go, oh, this doesn't work for that. Got to give that up. At least in this moment, be able to go stop. I can, one of the big questions or concerns for, or anticipations for elderly people or people in their, actually, how many people do you know that start their 401ks when they're in their 20s because they want that huge amount of money in for their retirement because they're afraid there's not going to be enough. So this whole fear package that comes along with us of the 401k to take care of our future. But as we get older, we still worry, because if you're worrying here, you're going to worry here, and more so. Like I said, whatever you are here, you're going to be more of that here. So if you worry about money, you're going to worry about money. And then you're going to worry about, and so when we watch that worry about money, it's like we can go, you know what, that gets in the way of me actually being here in the moment. In this moment, do I have plenty of money? Yes. In this moment, do I need to worry about money? No. Okay. Can we be in this moment and enjoy this moment? Yes, and it's hard. It's like, yes, it's hard. And let's talk about what's happening in this moment that is happy and positive. Okay, in this moment, can you move your fingers? Yeah. In this moment, can you get out of your chair? Yeah. In this moment, can you sing and dance and laugh? Yeah. All right, let's do it. And just for fun, we do it. As opposed to going, yes, but now I have to, and you could go back to worry, but that's a choice. Now it becomes a choice. So we go, what's happening right now? Is it necessary to worry about that now? No. You have plenty of the money in the bank. Yeah. Even if you have $200 in the bank. Do you have money in the bank? Yeah. Are you okay now? Yeah. Okay, great. Let's talk about what's happening right now. In this moment, I can hear my fountain in my fish pond. It makes happy noise for me. I have a little tiny green tree frog. He lives outside my door, comes inside every once in a while. It makes me happy, right? So I have a lot of things that make me happy in this moment. And that's what we have to watch. We have to say, oh, there's that future thing, or watching I haven't talked much about our past, but we can spend a lot of time talking about the past, but it doesn't create necessarily the thriving of this moment. And that's what we're generating here, is the attention and the focus to bring about feeling and experiencing and expressing that young heart now. Why not? Why not? That's the question. So any answers to that? Leave comments below. Like, why not experience happiness and joy right now? Why not? I want to hear. Why not? Because, and then fill in the blank. So if you haven't already, if you would give me a thumbs up for this video today, if you found it valuable, I would really appreciate that. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do that. And again, there are challenges. It's not as if I'm trying to be a Pollyanna here and say, oh, life is great no matter how old you are. And it's all because there's always challenges, no matter who we are, no matter where we are in this process of living, we always come up against challenges, whether it's, that our children or our dear friends that have illnesses and diseases or losses, or our own challenges with our own diseases and losses, is we always are brought up against challenges. And each of those challenges have an opportunity to grow us. And much like Marge's mom says, I don't have to live in pain. I can make a choice to do something different. And she did. And it was important enough for her, this reason to live. My intention is to be pain-free when I die. Awesome. And she had such convictions that she created that. That's what I want for you, is to have the conviction that your happiness, that your fulfillment, that your young at heartness be an expression in the world forever, basically. That's what I want for you, and for you to cultivate that conviction to make that happen. And it's just a matter of going, oh, there's that negative thought. Gonna give that one up because it's not getting me to thriving. It's not getting me to that place of happy, spontaneous me. And every time we do that, nope, that's a negative thought. Don't need it. There are negative thoughts we need. It's like, oh, it's a thunderstorm. I better close down the car door, put the windows up on the car. Makes sense. Oh, I live in an earthquake zone. Better make sure I've got water. Those kinds of things that make sense. But it's when we create the negativity that is not necessary. And that's probably 90% of our life. Like I said, 80% of our life is spent in negative thinking. And most of that isn't necessary. So you get to choose. You get to choose. All right. Any last words? What was the big takeaway for you guys who are here? And thank you for that that thumbs up, whoever just gave that to me. What's the big takeaway from those of you who are here on this live chat? And if you would, below, in the comments below, afterwards, if you are seeing this afterwards, leave a comment below. What's the big takeaway for you from our time together today? So Marge says, her big takeaway is, I'm choosing positively. Excellent. Oh, no, choosing positivity. Yes, choosing positivity. And again, it's like, it's not like it's an easy peasy thing. There's a training involved. I use that word all the time. One of my favorite sayings was from Star Wars. What's his name? The little wise person. Can't remember his name right now, but he said, train yourself to let go of what you're afraid to lose. And training is so important in learning who we are and becoming who we want to be in our sense of our fullest essential self. Marge says, I'm choosing positivity today. Excellent. Excellent. Yoda, thank you. So Yoda said, train yourself to let go of what you're afraid to lose. And I kind of went a little bit step further and said, train yourself to notice, first of all, what you're afraid to lose, what you're afraid to let go of. And that's just a really good thing to notice. Like, I'm afraid to let go of that. I'm afraid to let go of my worry about money. Okay. I'm glad you know that, but you're at least articulating it for yourself. I don't want to let go of my fear of losing my spouse before I go. I don't want to let go of my fear of falling down, those kinds of things. So just noticing that is just the start. So thank you for being here with me today. And I will look forward to seeing you again next week. All right. Aisha says, thank you, Rosie. All your words are gems. Thank you, Aisha. Big hugs to you guys. Bye for now.